As many of you may know, Starfield has been getting a lot of negative feedback. Recently, the review score on Steam crossed into the mixed review category. I have voiced my grievances with the game in my last video where I spoke about my experience at over 300 played hours. While negative reviews can serve a purpose, it's what the developer decides to do with all that feedback that matters. In this case, Bethesda decided to respond, but not in a way that would be entirely appropriate. Now, at first glance, if you look up these reviews on Steam, you will see that a developer has responded. This does not mean that someone from the dev team or anyone who had any part in making the game is responding. No, if you look closely, these responses are coming from the customer support team. Additionally, if you read those responses, you'll begin to see a pattern. 1. These responses seem to be copied and pasted from marketing material, and 2. They almost seem to be AI driven. Now, I may be wrong on the AI part, but I don't think I am. If I am wrong, and those responses are written by a real person, then that only makes it worse. Either way, most of these responses are not something that should be said. For example, one review mentioned that Starfield lacks that certain Bethesda magic that allowed players to make the game their own through choice and consequence and exploration. This is a fair review to make. While the review is simple, it is an accurate assessment of the current game. At this point, you would think that nothing would or even should be said in response, and I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong. No, instead Bethesda decided to respond by saying, "We are sorry that you do not like landing on different planets and are finding many of them empty. Some of Starfield's planets are meant to be empty by design. That is not boring. When the astronauts went to the moon, there was nothing there. They certainly weren't bored. The intent of Starfield's exploration is to evoke a feeling of smallness in players and make you feel overwhelmed. You can continue to explore and find worlds that have resources you need or hidden outposts to look through." This response went on a bit more, but you get the point, because the rest of the response was not any better, I assure you. Another review that had a very common criticism about the amount of load screens evoked this response. "While there may be loading screens in between fast traveling, just consider the amount of data for the expansive gameplay that is procedurally generated to load flawlessly in under 3 seconds. We believe that shortcoming will not hinder our players from getting lost in the world we created." Once again, the response was a bit longer, but you get the point from just that piece of it. Okay, so I guess this means that load screens are now to be accepted at every point of gameplay. Another recent review mentioned how things get boring after doing them the first time, meaning this person doesn't like to repeat the progress again, or that New Game Plus is not that appealing to him. Bethesda's response was, "You can fly, you can shoot, you can mine, you can loot. Starfield is an RPG with hundreds of quests to complete and characters to meet. Most quests will also vary on your character's skills and decisions, massively changing the outcome of your playthrough. Try creating different characters with backgrounds and characteristics that clash or are opposite of your previous character. You will feel like you are playing a totally different game. Put points in different skills from a character you've previously created, and you are now faced with completely different decisions to make and difficulties to encounter. There are so many layers to Starfield that you will find things that you never knew were possible after playing for hundreds of hours." Nice. Rhymes. And again, it does go on a bit longer, but you get the point. There are many more gems like these, but I really don't think I need to cover each one, since there are literally hundreds of responses. Now, I do want to be clear here, this is not exclusively a Bethesda problem. These types of responses by customer service are largely an industry-wide issue. The problem I have with the responses are that they come across in a negative way. Oftentimes, it is not what you say, but rather how you say it that causes a problem. In this case, Bethesda is giving everyone the middle finger and saying the reason you don't like the game is because you're playing it wrong. I'm sorry, but you don't get to decide how I should or should not play a game. No developer should be able to say something like that. Bethesda responding in this manner flies in the face of what we have been told for years. For years, we have been told that their games are designed to give players the ability to do whatever they want, however they want, with little to no consequence. Now it seems that this is not the case, and we should just shut up and do what we're told. Well, I don't think so. I will play the game as I see fit, and if you can't handle some criticism about the game that you made, then that is your problem, Bethesda. I'm sorry if I seem overly critical of the game, but if everyone just ignores the issues and refuses to speak up, then nothing will change and every game will get progressively worse. Our voice is all we have to communicate with. I understand that some people might want to stay on Bethesda's good side for fear that they won't get invited to events or included in first looks and such. Personally, I don't care about any of that. If I happen to get something, great. If not, then so be it. What I won't do is compromise my integrity just for the sake of saving face. So are negative reviews affecting the game? Well, yes and no. On one hand, there are people out there saying that the player base is dropping, and while this is true, we don't really know by how much. The only numbers we have to go off from is Steam. We are past the 12-week mark since release, and if we compare Starfield to other Bethesda titles at the same point in their release cycle, there is a story to be told. At the 12-week point for Skyrim, the player base dropped 70.26% from launch. Fallout 4 dropped 86.35% in the same 12-week point. And right now, Starfield has dropped 90.83% in player count. These numbers are not exactly comparing apples to apples since it only contains Steam player numbers, but there is clearly a drop-off of players. Looking through Twitch also reveals that there are not a lot of streamers playing the game either, and those that were did not have large view counts. All of this, while not an exact full picture of the situation, does point to there clearly being a problem as the game is not connecting with players the way they had hoped. The point I'm trying to make here is that if someone gives you criticism, there's usually a good reason. Just because you don't like or agree with said criticism does not mean that it is not true. Most reviews are going to be written from a personal viewpoint. I can see the other side of this coin too. I can certainly understand that Bethesda sees this as a damned if we do or damned if we don't respond situation, and they would be right to a point. The customer support team should not be responding to reviews in the manner that they are. It does not help the conversation and will only serve to further divide the community. The point is that everyone is entitled to their opinions, and those should not just be swept under the rug by saying, well, if you don't like the game, that is your fault. Much of the criticism is deserved. For my part, Starfield disappointed me. That does not mean that I can't still enjoy the parts of the game that keeps me coming back for more. It just means that Bethesda needs to do better and stop with the lazy haphazard ideas. Again, the responses are not just a Bethesda problem, it is an industry-wide problem. Hell, I could even go as far as to say it is a corporate problem within most any company. I work in the cell phone industry in customer service. It is my job to address customer concerns. Even if there is no resolution that will make the customer happy, I still have to deliver that message in a way that does not basically end with me giving them the middle finger. Like I said earlier, it's not what you say, but how you say it. The customer support team could be right, But when they say things like, when the astronauts went to the moon, they weren't bored, the player's not going to say, oh gee, you know what? You're right. I was completely wrong. No, instead they're going to get even more mad and may even take things further or simply stop playing altogether. Plus, saying something like that does not even make any sense at all. You know what? I would not be bored either if my life was on the line. Starfield is not real life. It is a game, and games are meant to be fun. They are meant to be an escape from reality. That is why I get mad when games bring in real-world hot topic issues. I want to be able to play a game that gives zero fucks about anything other than being the best game possible. If I could communicate just one message to Bethesda, it would be this: get back to basics. Focus on good, compelling stories that give us real choice and consequence, not the illusion of it. The last really great game that Bethesda put out was Morrowind. Why? Because that game had all of those things. Starfield forced me to step back and take an honest look at every game they've put out over the years, and even a game that I love, Fallout 3, really only gives the illusion of choice and consequence. No matter what you do, the result is the same. There is no way to side with the Enclave, or even just side with yourself. In the end, the choice is already made for you. Fallout 4 kind of has choice and consequence, but even that game has its own issues. 76 does not have any of that at all. No matter what you do, you can still side and work with everyone. There is no consequence at all, and Starfield is the same way. No matter what you do, the choice is already made for you. Hell, you can't even try to play as an evil character because the game literally forces you to be good at every point. This is why people are either leaving the game or leaving negative reviews. I know that I'm getting on my soapbox, but I just can't help it because I see what this game could have been, and it could have been so much better than it is. I would even say that it should have been better, given the amount of time that it was in development. Anyway, I just wanted to get my thoughts about the situation out there. Let me know what you think about the responses in the comments below. While you're at it, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, I'm just glad you stopped by. And I'll see you in the next one.